Hi, and welcome to Truth Amp. My name is Emmanuella Grace, and I'm here with Craig Lawton, where we are two experts in our field discussing stuff that we're not necessarily experts to be discussing. I am the noob in the room when it comes to AI, and I have some dumb questions for Craig, who is an expert. I happen to be an expert in human interaction, communication, and the voice. And I want to help those of you who are like me out there understand what on earth is going on with this great AI revolution. There are no dumb questions, and if there are, I'm asking them. So, Craig, I've got a question for you that's been bothering me.
Yeah.
How do I know if AI is lying to me?
Well, it's a good question. There's a lot of confusion. What's real? Am I actually in Cairns on holiday, or is this just an AI? um,
Oh, that was a little humble brag right there.
um, just thought I'd throw that in. I think a lot.
Could be making it all up.
I could be, just a bot. But I think saying lying implies some kind of intention on the behalf of AI, and AI is probabilistic, and so it basically it works out when it's doing a response. It works out using probability what the most likely or most probable word should be in the response, and they're designed to be helpful AIs and not necessarily accurate. And because they're probabilistic, they don't give necessarily the right answer every time. And so rather than saying lying, I think what we call it in the industry is an hallucination. The model hallucinates. Sometimes it gives inaccurate information.
So, ethics aside, my understanding is that AI has been designed to give an answer no matter what. And we may have mentioned this in an earlier podcast where, um, it'll give you a misleading response. And unless you catch it out or query it, you will be given that in a way that's presented as a fact. So, there's more than one kind of lie. There's lies of omission where you just don't tell someone and you've deliberately misled them. Is that not necessarily a fundamental flaw in the way it's designed, that it's misleading people by giving answers that presented as infallible but may actually be incorrect?
Yeah, I think when you're an expert in something, you pick
Mhm.
up straight away when the answers are wrong. So I think experts.
I will say that no expert's infallible, though. I actually asked AI recently to give me a rundown of something to do with something in psychology, where I thought, oh, it's easier to pick up a summary online than actually go and write it myself. And I was reading through it, and it was presented as something that was written in full. And even as an expert with a postgrad in psychology, just drop that one in there, I had to kind of do a double taking. I think something's missing, and then you know, pull out a textbook just to check if And so I'm like, okay, look, something tells me I'm missing something here. But AI has presented this to me as if this is a fact where it's in full and all bases have been covered. So um, I didn't have the nous to ask it, are you sure that's everything? Because my understanding is it kind of only runs a search for X amount of content before it taps out and goes, yeah, I've looked enough and this should be enough stuff to collate for you. But even as an expert, that nearly caught me out. And if I had have then sent that on to someone else as the expert, to be published in a newspaper or a magazine, that they trusted that as the expert, I had given them a full picture of this, that you can see how that just continues down the line.
Yeah.
So, you know, ethics aside, shouldn't there be some kind of caveat there that's a bit more made evident to users, that things that are presented to you as absolute may not actually be the full truth or the full picture?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to hallucinations, a lot of it does have to do with particular domains of knowledge. So, like I work in tech, and that's my life, and you work in with psychology.
With people in tech.
Yeah, and so the AI has been models, the foundation models behind these, have been trained on these large bodies of knowledge across the whole sort of internet scale knowledge. And I think it's not a bad metaphor to think of it like Swiss cheese, and sort of like, if there's a holes in the knowledge, and when you ask a question and it lines up with one of those gaps in knowledge, or the Swiss cheese holes, often it'll give an answer that is sort of a combination of likely factoids, which aren't actually truth, and then can put it together. Now, for general purpose questions like, why is the sky blue, for example, if you asked it a question like that, the models are actually getting really good at doing that quite accurately. So most of the major models now are well under 1% hallucination rates, and that's really good. But when we get into these specific things, and this happens for me with technology, I'll be going and asking it something, it'll give me an answer which is a combination of facts in a likely kind of sentence, and I go, actually, that's completely wrong. And I'll say to it, so I'll say, no, that's not what I meant. This is what I meant. And then I think Claude has this habit of going, you're absolutely correct. I think that's
Wait, so this is where you're expert enough to catch it out. But my concern is around, you're a tech expert using a model where you understand that it has these flaws in it. But I had the weekend away with a boomer friend of mine who, the way he speaks about, let's check with the AI in the sky kind of mindset, he has no understanding that AI is fallible. He thinks that anything that these large language models churn out is going to be absolutely accurate. Like, that's his mindset. And so what I wonder is, like, you and I are relatively informed because of, you working in tech, me spending a lot of time with people in tech and speaking to people like yourself. But, where's the responsibility lie to inform the user of the fallibility of a piece of tech in this instance?
Yeah, so I think the industry's still working out a lot of the, who's responsible for what. So there's Australian consumer law, which covers some of this, but the Australian Treasury is currently reviewing that to see whether that's adequate. There's company director responsibility for AI decisions. There was a famous legal case, in a New York legal case, where somebody used AI. It's a bit old now, but
because AI is 2 years old, so
it is.
ChatGPT is.
Well, when I'm
Ancient.
using AI for research, I actually often have to ask it to only look at information from the last few months or 2025 or something like that. But this New York case fabricated, in the legal research, fabricated 6 non-existent cases with non-existent, with fake judge names and non-existent airlines. And so
Oh my God.
a substantial fine. And
So where did it get that stuff from, though, to begin with?
well, this is the thing. As I said, it's probabilistic. And this is, there's been a lot of improvement since that particular case. It's a great story. But since then, there's been a lot of improvement in the techniques that people can use to get more accurate information. But as you get more and more into expert and domain expert information, you need to think about it. So my example there was the sky blue, that, less than 1% hallucination rate. That's really not too bad, and it's getting better all the time. But if you're looking at legal information like that example, or medical information, or other domain specific information, the hallucination rates can start to get up to 5, 10, 15%. And so it really was a of that, like the raw models, like the raw, just using them, the vanilla models, really, you only start to get useful information when you actually bring the data and the information to augment the models. So you start to.
What do you mean by augment?
So there are different techniques. Probably the biggest thing that's happened in the geek world this year is a thing called MCP. And we won't go into MCP in details, but it's kind of like a standardized USB plug for plugging in data sources into the AI. And for most,
almost like neurons in the brain.
a little.
Do you know how neurons work? You kind of have your they they never actually fully mesh. They have kind of bits of stuff that go backwards and forwards to make things fire together.
Yes.
And
With
that okay.
with models, you might have like a connection to look at email, for example. You I connect it to your email, and you might say and have some instructions. Say when you're doing these kind of things, don't work it out from your existing knowledge base. Go out and retrieve information from email, and that's underpinned. And so what your users can do really should do for everything is to enable web search in these platforms, because what it'll do is, so first of all, these models get trained every few months, and the data they're trained on is only up to that date. So the latest Claude Sonnet 4 model, which I use, probably the most common, its data set it was trained on was only up to January 2025.
Mm-hmm.
But when you connect it to web search and it understands, like, I need to look for more current information, it can go off and do a web search to retrieve the information.
So it's not all. I would have assumed it was already searching the web. So that's where it's getting the information from.
I'm not too sure if they turn it on by default, but definitely in your settings, make sure web search is on.
That's wild.
And that's using that connectivity. But when you become an expert in these things, you can start to either build your own connections if you've got a little bit of software development skill, or you'll find in Claude, and you'll find in ChatGPT now you can start to connect different systems to it, so that when you're asking questions, it's actually going off and retrieving relevant data before it gives the answer. And so that can help to reduce it. But that's kind of the easiest example. But then as you get more into more domain-specific things like medical or legal.
So that's literally what I was thinking, is that's what the argument was about, was to do with health. And, the fact that there's a whole generation of people out there that still believe in the energy in, energy out explanation for weight loss. And there's a lot of shame and a lot of criticism of people that are overweight in our culture. And there's a lot of fear around the obesity rates that are going on in a lot of countries. And we have a lot of research that's more current now that shows us it's more complex than just energy in, energy out. But I think there needs to be more education then around prompts as well. Like, that's where, rather than fear that's being perpetuated in the media, there needs to be education, especially for older demographics, around prompts, because it's using a logic from a generation now that's quite well informed. But if you're in your 60s and 70s and you're believing, you're setting prompts that are going to give you things that kind of perpetuate your echo chamber or perpetuate or reinforce a belief you already have, it's very hard to argue with someone who goes, no, I'm right because ChatGPT told me that this is true.
Well, and
when in fact what they're having reflected back at them is something that reinforces a prompt that they entered in the first place, as opposed to something that has more critical thought and that says, perhaps the way you're phrasing this is skewing your perspective or giving you your position of bias.
It's a perfect example, actually, because there is a bias in the models because they're trained on historical data. So for a long period of time, when it came to weight loss, there was this belief in the food pyramid and counting calories, and that was the best way to lose weight. And this is not health advice, okay? But
no, we are not qualified health practitioners. But anyone that knows me well knows I've been on a journey with this over the last few years after I was diagnosed with a blood sugar condition, and I had 20 years of people shaming me and giving me a hard time about energy in, energy out. And sometimes all I was eating was one egg and a handful of broccoli and being told I was still eating too much.
Yeah.
And my weight gain had absolutely nothing to do with necessarily how much I was eating, and more to do with the fact that I had an undiagnosed condition. But I still get these conversations that infuriate me where it's like, well, it's energy in, energy out. You need to exercise more.
There's a lot of but when it comes to AI, it because that's what it's been trained on. It's been trained on repetitive, the same message over and over again. It becomes the way it responds. And so if you're thinking trying to the opposite of lying, seeking the truth, then you really want to think about how the fact that these models are probabilistic. If they've seen something 1,000 times,
what's a word for probabilistic for idiots in the room like me?
Oh, it's just based on all of the training data that it's seen. It's
So it's going to take an average of all the stuff it sees.
Yeah, it's not a bad shorthand way of thinking about it, and that's very useful. But it's not.
Well, a lot of us don't have the time to think about it in any way that's more nuanced than that.
Well, for general knowledge and things that we generally agree as facts, even though that's becoming a challenge these days, that's actually really quite useful because there's a lot of social proof, there's a lot of data that proves the case. But sometimes when it's an emergent truth or a very specific personal truth,
Or untested truth.
yeah, it's actually can be a challenge. So you're right,
Okay.
getting better at asking the right questions of AI, and I think as we go further, there's going to be more techniques which people
Yeah. All right. So I guess that's the reco for today, dear expert, is that when it comes to the ethics of who's responsible, we don't know yet. It's still TBD. And when it comes to what we think the solution is, at the end of the day, we need to take responsibility for our own education, but also there is a space there for the current print media to step in and start publishing some concepts around, things like biases and prompts, and understanding that, ChatGPT is not infallible in terms of its answers.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the easiest thing is a good advice is just to make sure web search is turned on. So it's always looking at the latest things. Like,
Well, and giving it a time frame, that's what I've learned today. That has never occurred to me to do that. So that's a cool tip. Thank you.
no worries,
Web search on, give it a time frame. Check.
done.
See you next week. Bye.
That's it.